Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan, and with more injuries hitting our FPL teams and with a big blank game week coming up next week, well, it might be time to hit the wildcard button. So we're going to try and save you guys' asses today. So make sure you drop a like, do subscribe. Let's have a look at a wildcard strategy for game week 28. So yes, as I mentioned, this is more than just a wildcard team for you to use. This is a whole strategy that is going to enable you to really build a wildcard team that works in the long term. It's going to work within a chip strategy, and it's not going to damage your team in the long term either, which I think a lot of people have maybe struggled to build. So we're going to cover it all today of how a wildcard this week can actually work. Now, this is going to be using the all-rounder strategy, a strategy that I spoke about in a video last game week. If you want to learn about all of the different kinds of chip strategies available to you right now, make sure you do check out that video from last week. We'll leave a link at the end of the video for you guys to check that video out if you want to. But I've got on screen for you guys basically the projected fixtures that I have come up with based on what fixtures need to go where in future game weeks. Now, this is not going to be 100% accurate, and we'll probably get a better idea around game week 30, 31. Everything will start getting a little bit more locked in. But for now, I think it's safe to assume that the rest of the season will look a little bit like this. So we're looking at a wildcard in game week 27, 28, obviously 28 now, and we'll be looking at a potential free hit in game week 34 because there's going to be some more double game weeks there, and the big double game week of the season is going to hit in game week 37. So that's where you're going to want to use your bench boost. Now, if you don't have a free hit, you can still use this strategy. It still works. You may not get the most out of game week 34, but you can still make it work pretty well. So guys, let's go through the team, and then we're going to show week by week how it works, what transfers you'll be looking to make sure your team is good for now, but also good for the future. Future-proof your team. So this wildcard team, it costs just 92.9 million. Very, very cheap, but that is for a reason. And we're going to talk about transfer moves beyond this game week at the end of the video. But yeah, let's show you the team now, and you'll soon see why we've got so much money in the bank here for this particular team. So first of all, in goal, we've gone for Kaminski. And I know what you guys are thinking. Dan, I thought you were going to put Neto in goal for the Bournemouth double game week. They've got a slightly better double game week, don't they? Yes, they do. But it will be revealed very, very shortly why we're going to go for Kaminski in goal. But a big factor with these Luton Town players, which gives you a real advantage if you're wildcarding this week, is that not only do they have a double this week, but they also have a very, very nice fixture against Nottingham Forest next game week. So there's 2 game weeks that we can really, really maximize our points on, and Bournemouth don't quite have the same kind of appeal, I guess, because they have a double this week, but they have 0 fixture next game week. So Kaminski is going to work very well for the next 2 game weeks in particular. Pretty cheap at 4.5 million. He will pick up saves, and although clean sheets are kind of rare for Luton Town, they do pick them up occasionally, and you reckon in these particular fixtures, well, if they're going to keep clean sheets, it's going to happen somewhere around here, you would imagine, right? So Kaminski is first of all our goalkeeper. Now moving into defense, we are going to go for Gabriel at 5.3 million, and he's actually going to be our most expensive defender. I think we all have learnt by now that there's no point in spending too much money in the defensive positions because clean sheets are just a bit of a myth apart from Arsenal. Arsenal consistently strong keeping clean sheets, aren't they? So Gabriel, with his aerial threat, his attacking ability, as well as that propensity to keep those clean sheets, is going to be a really nice player to just have and hold. To have and to hold, Gabriel is definitely the guy. We've got Doughty up next with a double game week this week and a fixture against Forest next week. Again, with Luton, not necessarily expecting clean sheets, but with Doughty in particular, we know by now that his attacking threat, his creativity is phenomenal. Creates chances every single game week over and over and over again for his teammates. And Luton Town are not shy from getting goals. They can score goals even though they too concede goals, and Doughty is a big part of the creativity in that team. So he is going to be a player that we will be looking at for the next 2 game weeks, and one of the best, if not the best, Luton Town player to pick up right now. There maybe is one more that I do prefer, but we'll get to that player very, very shortly. Next up in defense, we've got Zabani. Zabani is, well, he is what Senesi was supposed to be. Obviously, Senesi picking up an injury today, and we're going to go for 4.4 million Zabani instead, the most nailed-on defender in this Bournemouth team for the long term. Nice double game week this week. As we know, Sheffield United is a prime fixture for a clean sheet. And actually, you guys probably know by now, but Bournemouth, their defensive numbers are really not too bad, and they backed that up with a clean sheet today, didn't they? So, pretty decent stuff. Even after that, the fixtures are not too bad, and we did see in our graphic earlier that the Bournemouth players are looking at a potential double game week in 34. So if you are not free hitting in game week 34, well, hey, there is potential there for you guys to have a double game week Bournemouth defender for that fixture as well. So you're probably going to rotate him a little bit. At 4.4 million, that's absolutely no problem to put him on the bench in future game weeks. But for now, this game week, he works very, very well. Not the same attacking threat as a Senesi, but still, at 4.4 million, you can't really go wrong for a double game week defender playing for a pretty decent defense, in fairness. Moving into midfield, we have got Heung-min Son. Now, he is the man of the moment, the player that everyone is talking about right now, and he had to be in this team. A big reason for his inclusion in this team is because this Aston Villa fixture is the kind of fixture that very much suits Son. This is a Son kind of game that you would want to have him in your FPL team for, because he has that ability to play on the counter-attack, get in behind the defence, and score goals with his elite finishing ability. And even after the Aston Villa game, well, we've got Fulham in the blank game week, because we need to make sure we're building a team that is good for the blank game week. You are going to see shortly, guys, that this team is very, very strong for this game week and the blank game week as well. And Son is probably going to be your captain in Game Week 29. He's probably going to be everyone's captain in Game Week 29, to be honest, because he is by far the standout player for that game week. He really, really is. After that, Luton Town, West Ham United, and we've got double game weeks on the horizon for Spurs as well. We know that Spurs are going to have 2 double game weeks between now and the end of the season as well, as long as everything else goes roughly to plan. But yes, Son, double game weeks coming up later on in the season, and that's going to be very, very nice indeed. He's going to have at least 1, probably 2. In my opinion, and yeah, that's going to be brilliant as a long-term hold. He's going to be one of those glue players that really sticks your team together. We have got Saka up next, another player who's been super important in FPL recently, another player you just want to have and hold. You know, these 2 Arsenal players, Gabriel and Saka, I think you just hold them through the rest of the season. Now, granted, they do have a blank in Game Week 29, so you would be looking to bench them in Game Week 29. After that, Man City, it's a tough game, but we've seen that Arsenal have got a result at Man City already this season. Can they do it again? Wouldn't be super confident about that one necessarily, but certainly he is a player who has just been so good this season. You just want to own him. And we've got Luton Town after that. The fixtures get a little bit nicer after that as well. And Arsenal are expected to have 1 more double game week between now and the end of the season, replacing that game week 29 blank. You know, we'll have a double later on in the season. We've got Maddison up next, a player showing a little bit of form with last game week 27. Back on everyone's minds, I imagine, as well. He's going to be hopefully feeding Son through that central position, and, you know, on those free kicks, on those corners as well. That's going to be beneficial. More avenues for getting points for Maddison, and hopefully can continue to recapture that form that made him pretty much essential at the start of the season. He really was brilliant, and I think he can do it again with this run of fixtures. Jared Bowen is our next pick. He's got a fixture against Burnley, first of all, which is very, very nice indeed. We know that Burnley is one of the fixtures we do want to target. Now, West Ham have kind of been in and out of form recently, mostly out, but Bowen, back-to-back game weeks with returns now, which is definitely a positive sign, and Paqueta coming back into the West Ham team is surely going to make a difference to West Ham's attacking ability. So definitely he is going to be a better player than he was, but probably not a long-term hold, and we would be looking to sell Bowen very shortly, but for the next 2 game weeks in particular, he looks very nice. And actually, I think if you needed to hold him for beyond that, game week 30, 31 against Newcastle and Spurs, they are good teams, but they are teams that concede chances, concede goals as well. So West Ham do have potential there as well. Up front, Ollie Watkins, of course, he's going to be in this team. He is in every team that anyone has built ever. If you haven't got Ollie Watkins yet, what are you waiting for? He's going to be super crucial for the next 2 game weeks, because this Spurs defense is still showing fragilities, and Aston Villa will look to capitalise that at home, where they are just brilliant. West Ham is the fixture after that. Another potential captain option, if you don't have Son for Game Week 29, you maybe look at Watkins, but with this team, you are going to have both. Watkins is still probably worthwhile in the discussion of captaincy for Game Week 29, but I think we'll probably be more likely to go for Son. But still, Ollie Watkins, very nice player. Wolves after the blank game week as well, and after that, Man City, and the fixtures do start to get a little bit worse from Game Week 31 for Aston Villa. After that, we've got Solanke. Well, of course we have. Back to fitness. We were a little bit worried if he would play in Game Week 27 or not, but he did start the game. Maybe didn't look brilliant in that game, but still, this fixture, double fixture, is just fantastic. Sheffield United and Luton Town at home. You pretty much can't get better than this if you are a forward. This is like 2 of the most prime fixtures a forward can wish for, isn't it? So you really do need to make sure you have Solanke in your team for Game Week 28, and a wildcard allows you to do that very easily, bringing him into your team. Even after that, the fixtures aren't too bad. We mentioned a potential double game week in 34 for Bournemouth as well. I think that's pretty likely. So overall, Solanke is just a great pick. Again, a player who doesn't play in Game Week 29, which is a small issue, but I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue as we look to cover it with the other wildcard players. We've got Morris as our final player in the starting 11 for this game week. Morris, a player on penalties for Luton Town, as well as a player who is showing a little bit of goal-scoring form recently, and at just 5.1 million, he's a real bargain pickup as well. So why not go for him? Nottingham Forest is the blank Game Week 29 fixture in addition to that, so that is going to be another opportunity to get yet more FPL points on the board, and Spurs after that as well. Pretty decent again. So looking through this team, you can already see we have got 5 double game week players for Game Week 28. That is quite a lot. It probably scares a few of you guys. I'm sure probably a few of you guys are saying, are we not overcommitting a little bit to this Game Week 28 double? Maybe a little bit, but you're going to see shortly how it all works out, and how you, even going for all these double game week players, you can still make your team look good after Game Week 29, because you really can if you follow certain transfer strategies. So let's go to the bench before we do that. Kelleher. He is our backup goalkeeper. And against Man City, you're not going to look to play him, really. But we have received news that Alisson could be out for a little bit longer than expected. We could see Alisson out all the way until the end of April. You know, he could be out for a very long time. And at 3.7 million, Kelleher for Liverpool, what an amazing bargain player that we never really thought we would have. I mean, wow. The Liverpool goalkeeper for under 4 million, that is an absolute dream. And by using the wildcard now, you can bring this player straight into your team, where everyone else is probably going to have to spend transfers getting in Kelleher, because Kelleher really is, you know, almost too good to be true. He's an amazing pickup that I know a lot of people will perhaps want to bring him into their team, but goalkeeper transfers, you know, are usually low priority. A wildcard allows you to just do it. Now, for the next 2 game weeks, Kelleher is useless to you, but the good thing is, in the next 2 game weeks, Kaminsky is very useful to you. So what you'd be looking to do is play Kaminsky for 2 game weeks only, and then go for Kelleher beyond that. If you went with a Neto strategy, on the other hand, then what you'd have to do is you'd have to have Neto as your goalkeeper this game week, and then you'd have to actually have maybe another 4.5, 4.6 million goalkeeper for the following game week. And at that point, things might become a little bit problematic. So not necessarily something you would like to do. So it costs more money to go for like a Neto Flecken combination, and in the long term, well, you have okay goalkeepers, but you don't have a Kelleher. So I actually think I do prefer this combination of Kaminsky and Kelleher to like a Neto and a Flecken, which would probably be your other goalkeeper choice. So yeah, that's what we're going for. We've got Bailey on the bench here as well. I think you could potentially play him, though I'm not really sure which of your midfielders or forwards you would replace Bailey with for this particular game week, but we know he's a solid pick and it's going to be nice for game week 29. We've got a doggy on the bench here as well. I've gone for a doggy more of as a long-term pick, with his attacking ability being quite useful, but I think Region could also be a potential pickup here. I do like Region for his creativity and on some of those set pieces as well, but I do worry a little bit about the defense of Brentford at the moment, even though they do have a nice fixture against Burnley in game week 29. And finally, we've got Charlie Taylor, cheap 4 million guy. Just stick him on your bench, use him when you need him. Hopefully that's not going to be too often, but game week 29, he has a fixture at least, which is something, isn't it? So this is the team. We're going to put the captain's armband on Solanke for his double game week. I think that's pretty obvious. I'm going to put the vice captain on Saka this week against Brentford. That's pretty nice indeed. And I think this team should definitely score way above the average amount of points with the 5 double game week players. I think that's going to be really strong. In addition to that, having double Arsenal, having Spurs players in there, and no Liverpool and Man City who face each other, which is going to be a little bit of a risk. If that's a high-scoring game, then you might be in trouble. But if that scoreline is kept reasonably low, and we would imagine that the likes of Haaland, no one's going to be captaining Haaland in game week 28, really. So you are safe, a little bit safer than usual, of going without Haaland for this game week, but we would need to look to bring him back in very, very shortly. So let's show you how we are going to do that. So we are now on the Fantasy Football Hub My Team tool. If you guys want to check this out, you can do so by clicking the link in the description to start planning your team yourself, building a team using this tool and going week by week to see what it will look like and how many points you might look to get according to the AI predictions. It also gives you kind of suggested transfers and stuff, which is really, really handy. But let's show you this team. We obviously have spoken already about game week 28 and what this wildcard team would look like in game week 28. But the big question everyone has, if you're building a wildcard now, how can you future-proof it? How can you make sure it looks good for future game weeks? How do you make sure you haven't just destroyed your team for the sake of 2 game weeks, game week 28 and 29? And I'm going to show you how to do that with just using free transfers over the next couple of weeks to make a team that looks far more normal. Back to normal. That's what we want, right, guys? So, going to Game Week 29, first of all, just going to switch over to the next game week. You can now see that we have got 10 players. We haven't got 11 players. I think if you go for 11 players, that maybe causes an additional issue in your team. But if you really wanted to make an additional transfer here, if you maybe wanted to transfer Solanke to a Tony, for example, or something like that, and take that additional hit, because it would be an additional hit in the long term, then you can do. For this example, we're going to just go with 10 men in game week 29. I think that is going to be good enough. I think the key here is, as long as you have all of the main attackers for game week 29, I think you're going to be absolutely fine. And that does involve the likes of Son, Maddison, Watkins, maybe Morris against Nottingham Forest, and a couple of other of the guys around there as well. You don't really need to invest too heavily in the defense, but I think 10 players is going to be fine. But if you wanted to do Solanke to Tony, that would make a lot of sense as well. If you thought that there was potential to gain some decent points there, taking an additional -4, but it would mean potentially having to hold on to a Tony a little bit longer, or maybe not. Well, guys, you'll see with this strategy how this looks up next. So, game week 30. Now, this is the point where we have passed game week 28 with the double and 29 with the blank. And we want to make sure our team looks like a team that can survive in the long term. And the first player you're going to want to have is Salah. So you can see with all of the money, we spoke about having a load of money in the bank for the wildcard team. We have spent all of the money on upgrading Bowen to Salah. Suddenly, you've got your captain option for game week 30, because in game week 30, City play against Arsenal. So you don't really need those City players for the Arsenal game. That is usually a low-scoring affair compared to Liverpool City, which is a little bit more high-scoring typically. Arsenal City seem to be slightly more cagey games. So I don't think you need City players. I don't think you need Haaland for game week 30. And you will be looking to ride out game week 30 without an Erling Haaland in your team. But you would have Salah as your captain instead, which works. So let's move on to the next game week after we look at this team, which looks pretty strong for game week 30. At this point, game week 31, we would be needing to get maybe at least one Man City player in, and you know who it's going to be. So Erling Haaland has come into this team now. We have transferred out Ollie Watkins, who plays against Man City in game week 31, incidentally. But Ollie Watkins, with a lack of double game weeks for the rest of the season and his high price, you kind of just have to accept from game week 31 onwards that you can't have everyone. Someone has to be sacrificed. So if you do want Saka, Son, Salah, and Haaland all in your team, someone's got to go. And I think it possibly could be Ollie Watkins as the only player out of those guys who will have no more double game weeks between game week 31 and the end of the season. It just kind of makes sense there a little bit. So we've sacrificed Watkins. We've brought in Haaland using even more money that we had saved in our bank. And hopefully most of you guys are going to be able to afford this move. This move kind of takes us up to 102.6 million. So if you've got a team value of around 103 million, this is still going to work for you pretty nicely. So yeah, as long as you have that decent team value, this is going to work. You're going to be able to do this. If not, you might have to make maybe some slight downgrades elsewhere in your team. But if you've got Tony instead of Solanke, for example, again, that could cause potential issues there with affordability, but that's all going to be dependent on your own personal team value. But the big point here is we've made two transfers. We've downgraded Maddison down to Palmer to free up a little bit more money, and we've upgraded Watkins to Haaland. Now we've got the big hitters. We've got Salah, Haaland, Son. We've also still got Saka in our team, and the rest of the team is a little bit cheaper, but most of the cheapness really comes in defense, and I think that's fine. If you look at the front seven players, maybe with a rotation between Bailey and Morris in this team looks strong again. We are back to normal. We are back to building a good team that is good for the long term. Palmer is also not the only option here. You could go for a Gordon. You could go for a Eze if you are looking to buy some players who have a double in 34. Those are the kind of picks you might want to go for instead. But if you're looking to free hit in 34 using the wildcard in 28, well, actually, Palmer, I think he's probably the player to go for instead for game week 34 with that free hit. And then after that, you'd be looking to move towards a bench boost. And this team starts to look pretty strong for a bench boost as well after you make a few transfers. So, guys, the big point here is this team looks back to normal. The only place you might not be fully convinced is, maybe Zabani and Udogie. You might not be fully convinced by those two players, but they are defenders. And defenders don't really get us FPL points. Could you maybe change one of these defenders to an Arsenal defender? Yeah, potentially. Could you maybe find a new emerging defender to bring into your team? Yeah, possibly that as well. But yeah, this team with just free transfers allows you to fully capitalize on Game Week 28 and Game Week 29, and with just the 3 free transfers between Game Week 29 and Game Week 31, you can completely fix your team. You can completely make it back to normal, aside from maybe a little bit in defense, which, as we all agree, we don't really care about anymore. So this works, and this is the whole thing. I didn't think this could work. A lot of people think that, you know, if you wildcard now, it's going to destroy your team for the long term. It doesn't. There's a way to make it work. And this is, in my opinion, the way to make it work. And I'm very, very happy to share that with you guys today. So guys, if you enjoyed this, make sure you drop a like. Do subscribe if you want more FPL content. And let me know, will you be wildcarding this game week? I know myself, I'm personally considering it. And I think a lot of people out there will be considering it too, with all of the injuries that have come up recently. And maybe a way to prepare for Game Week 29 without having to use your free hit chip, fixing a lot of problems you have in the short term in the meantime as well. It works and I love it, guys. So guys, yeah, like I say, do check out my full strategy video. There's going to be a link there for you if you want to check that out, and you can see all the different kinds of strategies you could use. But aside from that, I'll be back tomorrow for another video and a stream, and I'll see you later, mates.